yes indeed. It is she, Attorney Shequel Ross from SHElaw firm. So we have some special guests in the house today. You guys know I go live every 2 weeks to talk about topics that relate to you guys. Right now, everybody's talking about back to school. So I thought, as an attorney, I would like to address students' rights when they do go back to school. So we have Cherry Lamb.
Hello.
Here. We have Daniela Martinez.
Hello.
And we have Charity Williams.
Hi.
They each go to or have gone to local Atlanta schools in the area, local Marietta schools, and
Creekside,
Fairburn schools in the Georgia area. So basically, like I said, when you go back to school, you should know your rights. It's not just about style, Mervyn's, Target, Nordstrom's, Jordan's, clothes, shoes, red bottoms. It's about going back to school, actually knowing your rights. Everybody's going back to school talking about clothes, but is anybody talking about going back to school knowing your rights? No, they're not. So as an attorney, I thought that that's something that I would do. And I'm proud to say that I am the first, it has come to my attention, the first and only attorney discussing this. So I am leading the way with topics and issues that relate to children, that relate to youth, and that relate to students when they go back to school this year, August and September of 2017. So I'm leading the way in this topic. Okay? So let's break this down. I'm going to be talking to you guys about your constitutional rights on campus, the rights you have if the Constitution protects you, and what happens if you get searched. What happens if you get seized? Okay? Is there a difference between a police officer and a school resource officer? Is there a difference between your locker and your purse? Okay? So let's just break all this down. It's like a lot of fancy verbiage here, but let's break this down. What is the Constitution? A constitution, I'm not going to get too political with you guys, but a constitution is basically just a big book that was created in the 1700s. It's more than just a big book, but I'm just keeping it real to the point, real narrow for you guys. A book that was created in the 1700s that contains basic fundamental rights as a citizen, as a human being. There are certain laws in there that the government has to follow. The First Amendment through the 10th Amendment is actually called the Bill of Rights. And within those Bill of Rights, it lists certain things that police and government agents can and can't do, right? So within those first 10 amendments, you have the 4th Amendment. Now, the 4th Amendment is your right as a person to be protected in your house, your things, your belongings, your shoes, your baby's car seat, your hair, your items, your mom's back trunk, your trash can in your house, not the trash can outside in the dumpster, but the trash can in your house, your effects, your computer, all these things that belong to you. You have a constitutional right under the 4th Amendment that comes from the Bill of Rights, that comes out of the Constitution, to be protected, okay, against unreasonable seizures. So what does that mean? The police can't just come along and start seizing things from you and searching things. The police officer, which is a governmental agency, part of the government, has to go forth to a magistrate court to apply based on probable cause that they thought that a crime was being committed, and swear under oath and affidavit in front of a magistrate judge that he has probable cause, which is probability, more likely than not, that you committed a crime, okay? He goes to the magistrate court, the judge, and applies for an affidavit. It's an oath that he says, I swear that I have this information based on the totality of the circumstances. The judge then gives him a warrant. He goes to your house, knocks on your door. This is a situation if it's at your house. We haven't touched the school situation. Goes to your house, knocks on your door. As someone who is protected under the 4th Amendment, you don't have to open the door to the police officers. You know, we call them popos. You don't have to open the door for the popos. You already know. You know, in Atlanta, we call them 12, right? You don't have to open the door for the 12. You can count to 12. You could tell them that they could leave within 12 seconds, but you don't have to open your door for 12. You understand what I'm saying? But let's say if they have a warrant, they present you with the warrant. They could search your house because they've already gotten the warrant from the magistrate court. Okay? So,
does the Fourth Amendment only apply to elementary, middle, and high school, or does it apply to everyone?
okay, so that's a good question. She's asking if the Fourth Amendment applies to schools, or does it apply to public schools, private schools? Well, private schools, number one, have their own rules and regulations, okay? Public schools, there is a standard that says that public schools don't require what's called probable cause for students to be searched. It is based on reasonable suspicion, okay? So reasonable suspicion is what a school officer, school resource officer, counselor, teacher, principal, school administration staff, what they need to search. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, a police officer needs a warrant to search my bike, house, purse, backpack, and computer. What about my parents' car?
Yeah, she's asking, does a police officer need a warrant to search her backpack, her house, her computer, her parents' house, her parents' backpack, her parents' trunk? Yes, if it's at the house. Yes, because the Fourth Amendment protects you, your property, your things, your effects, and your houses. Now, but let's say for an example, this is at a school, right? Like I told you guys, we're going to be talking about going back to school. We're not talking about going back to school looking flashy. We're talking about going back to school knowing your basic constitutional rights, because the Fourth Amendment limits school searches and seizures. So what that means is, okay, schools are about safety. That's the number one thing. So there's a less standard that says that if it is a school official, like I said, a resource officer, a counselor, a teacher's aide, who are some other people that are at you guys' schools? Lunch staff.
Assistants of like the directors.
Assistants of directors, principals.
Yeah.
Administration staff, people like that. They're considered school officials. And a school official only needs reasonable suspicion to be able to search you in public schools. This goes to your first question. So, but get this, if it's a sworn law enforcement officer, they need probable cause, because the courts deem that maybe that law enforcement officer is considered a police officer. So a police officer needs what? A warrant, which is based on probable cause. Okay, that's amazing. That's good. That's good. Okay, so a sworn law enforcement officer needs probable cause. A school official needs reasonable suspicion. Okay, police officer, if it's at your house, your things, needs probable cause. A school official needs reasonable suspicion, and they can search you. Okay, now, let's say if a police officer is called and a school administrative officer, like a principal and a teacher, is working in cahoots with the police officer. Thank you. No. That means potentially that police officer is acting in an agency type format, acting on behalf of an agent for that school, and that means that there's laws and things that are intertwining. Okay? The police officer still needs probable cause, okay? It does not matter. But because this is at a school campus, if a school official observed it, it could be based off reasonable suspicion. And yes, you can be searched on a school campus, okay? Because some courts treat police officers or student resource officers as school officials. So sometimes you guys might have school resource officers at your school who are dressed in plain clothes or dressed in police uniforms.
Yes. Yep.
They are treated as school officials. So if they observe something on the campus, marijuana, weed, cocaine, drugs, guns, they can search you based on reasonable suspicion. They don't need to call a police officer, and they don't need probable cause. This is what some courts are saying. This is what case law is saying. Not Atty Shequel Ross, but case law that has gone before, that has set the precedent for schools and students within schools. Does that make sense?
So, how will I know if it's a school official?
So you'll know if it's a school official because it's somebody who works for the school. They're employed by the school. It's basically, think inside of your head, would this possibly be a person that is getting a check from the school? Okay, a teacher, a student, no. Okay, a police officer that comes, no. What about a counselor?
Yes.
At the school? What about a therapist? Okay, a principal. Let's say volunteers, parent volunteers. They sometimes can be deemed as working as school officials during that period of time that they're there, depending on what they signed and what they're doing. Okay? All right. So basically, if it's a school official, what do they need to be able to search you on campus?
Reasonable suspicion.
Reasonable suspicion. If it's a police officer at your house, or at your car, at you walking home 20 blocks away from the school, what does the police officer need to search you, your items, your things, your effects, your parents' houses, your parents' things?
A warrant.
A warrant. And good. A warrant is based on probable cause. Okay? So
what is a reasonable suspicion?
okay, that's a perfect segue into what reasonable suspicion is. We're talking about whether or not, if you just tuned in, we're talking about whether or not students going back to school can be searched. And you can if it's a school officer or a school official, the courts have said. So Sherry is asking me, what is reasonable suspicion? Reasonable suspicion is grounds for a search that evidence will produce. Not only Cherry, not only Daniela or Charity, because these are top A honor roll students, but top A honor roll students still do things they shouldn't do, but that student is committing a crime or, not committing a crime, violating a school policy, which in your student handbook, there could be hundreds of student policies. This book is probably over 70 pages. So reasonable suspicion is saying, hey, I'm a school official, I'm a teacher, and I've observed Daniela doing something she shouldn't be doing that goes against the student policy. Okay? She's violating a rule or is about to violate a rule. That's all reasonable suspicion is on a school campus. Okay? And the measure of conduct for the search, it can't be intrusive. So I observed Daniela as a teacher based on reasonable suspicion that I think she's violating student rules. One of those student rules is that she's not supposed to have, let's say, nunchucks. It's part of the safety school violation policy. And she has nunchucks, and I see them hanging out of her back pocket. She forgot to take them out. It's the day after Halloween, and she's still thinking that it's Halloween, and she brings her nunchucks to school, right? I'm a teacher, reasonable suspicion, I can search her, right? Now, the question is, how can I search her? Can I be intrusive with this? Can I be very obstructive with this? No, it has to match what is exactly going on. Nunchucks does not warrant me throwing her on the ground, searching her, putting her in handcuffs with her own nunchucks, and doing things that are outside of the scope of that search. Okay?
So how does reasonable suspicion relate to schools?
So reasonable suspicion relates to schools because it always, when it comes to the Constitution, you're always protected under the Fourth Amendment. Just always remember that. I don't care if you're an immigrant that has been here 10 years. I don't care if you're a citizen that has been here 1,000,000 years. The Fourth Amendment protects you, right? But let's say, for an example, let's get into the Fifth Amendment. You were caught doing something you weren't supposed to be doing that violated the student policy, okay? I, as a school official, can search you based on reasonable suspicion. That reasonable suspicion relates to schools because that official has to be able to articulate what they think they saw. That's what reasonable suspicion is. It is articulable facts based on what it is. I, as the official, have to be able to articulate the facts that I think that student violated the student policy. You have to articulate it. That's what reasonable suspicion is. Okay? So, she gets sent to the office. She gets suspended. But guess what? Before she is suspended, the Fifth Amendment due process kicks in. So what did I tell you guys? The Constitution, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution are the Bill of what? The Bill of Rights. The Fourth Amendment protects your person, place, things, right? The Fifth Amendment is about due process. Okay, you have to do a certain amount of process for this to happen. You get caught with these things. Before a school can suspend you, they have to give you a right to be heard and present you with the evidence in which they're suspending you, that they're telling you that they violated the policy, that you violated the policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do I know if I'm being violated or if I'm violating school policy?
Okay, you would know if you're being violated because if you get your student handbook also displays whether or not there is an investigation for the misconduct, whether or not students can question officials, what type of discipline there is, level 1 discipline, level 2 discipline, level 3, what type of intervention there is, what the students should be doing, what the parents should be doing, what the student resource officer should be doing, what the police officer should be doing. So I encourage parents, I'm talking to all you parents, whether those parents who would get involved or who don't. Your first day of school should not be about only clothes. It should be about your students knowing their rights and also your student bringing back that handbook, that student handbook. And that's how you'll know whether or not in there the school is following the disciplinary action and whether or not that teacher or what happened is also following the conduct under the teacher section. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Cool. So let's talk about some examples of reasonable suspicion. There are a lot of case law that talks about examples of reasonable suspicion. So let's just talk about this for a second here. So some examples of reasonable suspicion, that might be, let's say for an example, all of us are friends, right? We're students and we're at school. And we're huddled around and we're talking about everything. And a teacher passes by and thinks that us huddled around, whether African American, Asian American, Latina, excuse me, Spanish, no matter what, people discriminate. It doesn't matter the color, gender, origin, gay, black, white, Asian, long hair, dark hair, people discriminate. So people's reasonable suspicion could be based on their own experiences, but the courts have deemed and have said that reasonable suspicion must be articulable facts. So let's say we're all huddled around and we're talking. There's case law in regards to this case that says just because students are huddled around talking, has money in their hand, and even potentially dice in their pocket, and they all have their hands in their pocket, but I'm the only student that has money, and I'm counting out a bunch of money, like making it rain in the classroom. You feel me? That does not give a teacher, that's a 1987 case, Burham versus West, that says that doesn't give reasonable suspicion for the parent, the principal, the teacher, whoever observed that to conduct the search. Okay? Another type of reasonable suspicion is a report that a student has a gun. Now, I'm going to be very cautious with this area because in the wake of everything that's been going on with schools' main focus, I want to make sure you guys understand this because I don't need people calling me or texting me or DMing me about not talking about school safety. School safety is pivotal right now. Guns, which is your Second Amendment right to bear arms, guns are being taken on school campuses. But it is very important that you guys understand that if there is a call that your child as a parent possesses a gun on the campus, ultimate measures will be taken. That is reasonable suspicion. That call just to the school officer or just to the hotline is reasonable suspicion. And when your child gets to school, they will be searched. They will be patted down. Okay? Another form of reasonable suspicion, maybe a drug counselor observing dilated pupils, slurred speech, not able to walk in the classroom correctly. Now, this can be, some attorneys could argue that doesn't necessarily mean that child is doing drugs or drinking, okay? But that drug counselor who's been trained in that area, who knows more about drugs and illegal narcotics and wine or beer, might know whether or not those actions are that the child has committed that those actions that the child are committing is that he might be high, or drunk. Let's just be frank, throw it out there, right? Okay,
So, what about if a teacher smells marijuana in the home?
Okay, that's a good question, because I know when I was in high school, we're not going to be act like everybody is saints, but when I was in high school, people did smoke marijuana and people did drink, and there were drugs on campus. So Daniela's question is, what about if a teacher observes or smells, marijuana in the hallway? If a teacher smells marijuana in the hallway and there's hundreds of kids, 50 kids, 10 kids, 2 kids, that does not give that teacher reasonable suspicion to say that Daniela or me or another student that was just in that hallway, that was reasonable suspicion to think that they're the actual one that was smoking marijuana. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Do you guys have any other questions or anything?
So you said that if students are huddled up together and they're like have their hands in their pocket or money out or talking about money, that's just not enough reason or suspicion for them to search you?
Correct. So how would you feel if if you and other students were huddled around talking? No matter what race or gender they are, they're huddled around talking, and you're profiled, and a teacher comes up to you and asks you based on what she thinks reasonable suspicion is. That's why the courts are very cautious with what reasonable suspicion is on a school campus. Just because you're huddled around talking to your friends and one has money in their hand and 3 others have their hands in their pocket, that doesn't give them reasonable suspicion to think that you're talking about a crime or you're violating a student policy. So correct. But let me tell you something. If you observe one of your friends getting sent to the office, now you guys know to be able to tell them, hey, that has to be based on reasonable suspicion. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because if there is reasonable suspicion and there's a school, if it is a school resource officer, all they need is reasonable suspicion. But some things don't warrant them still to be able to search you just because they have reasonable suspicion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
And my parents purchased a locker lock. Is that, does that guarantee that the contents in my locker are safe?
Okay. So her question is that her parents purchased a padlock to put it on the actual locker at her school. So like I said, you might want to be careful. Teachers, parents, students, everybody needs a copy of the handbook, because there's going to be a certain section in there on whether or not you signed something that you gave them consent. You gave up your consent for them to be able to search your locker. If they can't get in your locker because they don't have the proper tools, it's not your fault. The school doesn't have the proper tools to cut the locker off or doesn't know your code. You could be in violation of a student policy because, like I said, the Fourth Amendment is diminished when it's based on schools and school campuses. So I would advise you, before your parents buy a padlock or anything, to get a copy of your school your school handbook. And most schools have what's called a 1-800 anonymous hotline. Atlanta Public Schools, they have a number that you can call if you go to any of the Atlanta Public Schools, where who understands 80 pages of a student handbook? But you can call and ask questions. So that might be something you can also ask. Okay? All right. Do you guys have any other questions?
So, is there anything I can do if I was searched?
So Cherry is asking, is there anything? I mean, yeah, this sounds like, like there's no, there's nothing that she can do in regards to searches and seizures at the Fourth Amendment. Yes, there are things that you can do. Your handbook is the number one thing, like I said. I want to emphasize that all parents and students must get. Okay, your handbook is going to outline and display what rights you have as a student and as a parent. Now, reasonable suspicion can be based on, they can go in your lockers. Some schools have dogs that sniff out campuses, metal detectors, backpacks, wallets, and some cars on student campuses can also be searched based on reasonable suspicion. So she's asking, okay, What can she do? If her things can be searched, if her car at the school campus can be searched, what can she do? Yes, you still can get the handbook and just understand, if it's a school officer, it's based on reasonable suspicion. That reasonable suspicion has to be based on whether or not that school officer observed and can articulate the facts that you've committed. Excuse me, the violation code or the law that you've violated on the school campus. If it's a police officer and it's your house, your person, your effect, and your things, and it's not at school, the police officer needs a warrant. Bottom line, school resource officer, Fourth Amendment is lessened. You only need reasonable suspicion. Articulable facts that you violated the student school policy. Police officer, probable cause, they need a warrant. They serve you with the warrant. Okay? Now, let's say, for an example, your locker is searched, okay? Or your body is searched. Or your purse is searched. Your hair is searched, okay? Your shoes are searched. Your gym clothes are searched. Let's just say all this happens at the school and all these things are searched. This is what I would advise, and I want you guys to pay, those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I'm advising students, excuse me, I'm being very careful, not advising students, but I'm showing students that not only can they go back to school in style, but they can go back to school knowing their rights. So let's say, for an example, your backpack, your item, your things, or your locker was searched at school. Document the conduct of the school official. Document what they did, how they did it. Take pictures of your locker, take pictures of your purse. You go to gym, you come back, and you realize your locker is open. You realize that another student standing next to you said, hey, such and such, search your locker, and it's a school official. Have your parents document it, get all the information that they did in regards to that search. Okay? Get the background of the teacher, who that teacher is. Have they been trained for this? Who you are, the background of you as a student. Are you a 7th grader? Are you a 1st grader? An intrusive search on a 1st grader is different than how they would search an 8th grader's backpack. So you want to get the background of the student. Number 3, get the alleged infraction. What are they saying that you did? Did you have marijuana in your suitcase or your backpack or your shoes, your gym shoes? Get the alleged infraction. Know what it is that you did. Know what it is what you violated. Okay? And then parents, you need to call and you need to ask so that way you understand how the school learned about the actual infraction. And then, this is the key thing right here, what we've been talking about this whole time. Was it a school official or was it a police officer that searched your things? Because if it was a school official that searched your things while you were at campus, that means that they needed what?
Reasonable suspicion.
Reasonable suspicion. And reasonable suspicion is based off an articulable amount of facts that they think that you violated a student policy. And there's evidence of that. But a police officer needs a warrant. So that's the key thing. So all parents, if your students' things were searched, ramshacked, you think you've been violated as a parent, as a student when it comes to searches and seizures under the Fourth Amendment, yes, the Fourth Amendment is a little less restrictive when it comes to schools, but that doesn't mean that you've given up all your rights. What that means is you need to know whether or not it was a school official or a police officer, okay?
So I have a question.
Okay.
So what are students' rights if they are suspended after search shows they violated school policy?
Okay, so she's asking, let's say all this happens, and let's say I'm a student on campus, and that search comes up that I did violate the student handbook, the student policy, having no drugs on campus. Some schools have a no tolerance for anything type of policy. Regardless, the Fifth Amendment kicks in. Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizures. Fifth Amendment, due process. Under due process, the school, before they suspend you for the infraction, they have to tell you what it is that you did, and they have to present you with evidence of what it is that you did. But guess what? The third thing, they have to give you a reasonable time to reply. They can't just suspend you. You understand what I'm saying? So it's shown that you did violate the school policy. Okay, so they suspend you without giving you a hearing. They can't do that. They have to give you a chance to respond. Does that make sense?
It does.
And there's case law on this. Okay? And basically your opportunity to respond is just a chance to tell your story. There could be a reason why there was marijuana in your backpack. Maybe somebody walking by who was going to get caught put it in her backpack. That doesn't mean that she shouldn't be given due process to be able to explain her side of the story. Because there's a defense to that. There's a reason why that happened. Okay? Do we have another question?
Yeah, can you break this down again, Attorney Shequel? My purse and backpack can be searched for no reason.
Yes, so what do we say? If this is not at school, if it's at your house, and the police officers have a warrant to search your property, your person, your mom's trunk, your backpack, your clothes, come inside and want a hair sample, your shoes, your bike, your skateboard, your skates, your Wii, your computer. If it's at home, the police officer needs what?
A warrant.
A warrant. And a warrant is based on what?
Probable cause.
Probable cause. So probable cause is just merely a probability that he goes to the judge, swears under oath or affidavit that somebody committed a crime. The judge issues him a warrant, takes it to your house. I need to search your skateboard. I need to search your purse. I need to search your things. He has a warrant. He can do that. That's what the Fourth Amendment says. It protects you against unreasonable search and seizures without a warrant. Okay? But now, let's flip this up because this is all about going back to school, right? So, you're at school and your backpack or your purse or your item, your shoes, your locker, your skates are in violation of student policy. The school official needs what to search those things?
Reasonable suspicion.
Reasonable suspicion. You're right. Correct. And reasonable suspicion is just fancy words for an articulable belief that that student is violating the student handbook policy. That's all this is, you guys. It's real simple. It sounds like it's not, but it's really, 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 real, you know, real simple. You know, I can see that. Okay. All right. So, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who play sports. Can they be drug tested?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so all you football players out there, all you basketball players, hockey players, I ran track. You see? Still got the dip right there. Everybody, track players, anybody that is doing any type of extracurricular activities and playing sports for a school campus can be searched. And this case law on that, it's a 1995 case, Veronica School District 47J action. And it says that if you sign up to play basketball, sports, track, your items can not only be searched based on reasonable suspicion from a school official, but guess what else? Guess what you have to submit to that's in the handbook, some of these handbooks. Guess what?
Police officers?
No, try again. That's a good answer though.
Do we have to submit to, like, I don't know, a search?
A search of what? Inside your body.
Your clothes?
Go deeper.
Bodily fluids?
Bodily fluids.
Oh.
Yes. So if you play sports, yes, you are consenting, and it doesn't matter under the Fourth Amendment because there's case law that says if you play sports, not only do your backpack, your items, other things, can they be searched, but if you play sports, you have to submit, and it's okay for you to submit to a urinary analysis so they can drug test you at any point, at any time. And if you don't take the drug test, you could be kicked off the team. It's in colleges, it's in high schools. So if you have friends, and all of us do, have friends who are doing certain things, you might want to let them know, hey, your pee is going to get tested. Point blank. Urinary analysis is a fancy word for all you guys who don't understand. It means bodily fluid. It means pee. Okay? So yeah, you have to submit to a test. So did that answer a lot of your questions in regards to going back to school? And
Yeah.
Plain.
it was plain. I broke it down.
Yes, thank you.
Break it down.
Okay. So let's just recap. So that way all you guys now tuning in, everybody understands. Like I said, going back to school is not about the flyest. It's not about the fanciest. It's not about the funnest. It's not about your Jordans. It's not about how much money you have in your pocket. It's not about any of that. You are a person, and under the 4th Amendment to the Constitution, which is a fancy book, that means that you have certain rights. The 1st Amendment through the 10th Amendment is the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. In those Bill of Rights, there's what's called the 4th Amendment. The 4th Amendment protects your house, your person, your place, your things, items, effects. It protects my pencil. It protects my necklace. If they want to get a sample, a fingerprint off my necklace. It protects my shoes. It protects my car. It protects everything under the 4th Amendment, okay? Now, against unreasonable searches and seizures, okay? But a police officer, if they have probable cause, which is probability that you committed a crime, can go under oath and affirmation and apply for a warrant. The magistrate judge gives him a warrant. He brings it to your house. He can search. But let's flip this because we're talking about going back to school. On a school campus, when you go to school, certain 4th Amendment rights are diminished because school is about safety. School is about keeping everybody orderly. School is about getting an education but not be harmed. So if it is deemed a school official, a counselor, a principal, a school staff, you guys said you have aides at your school, you said you have teachers' aides, you have drug counselors, you have therapists. If these people are working for the school and they're a school official, then basically they only need reasonable suspicion to search your items. Though that same backpack, that same purse that is now at the school, if they're a school official, they only need reasonable suspicion to search it. What does that mean? What's reasonable suspicion? It's just basically that you are violating student policy. So get a copy of your school handbook. Parents, get a copy of your student's handbook. If you don't understand it, call the 1-800 number in the handbook. Or you already know, you can call me, 855-5-SHElaw. And not only will we go through it to make sure that you didn't violate any rules, though that the teacher's misconduct, the principal, and everybody followed the rules. Okay? So let's say, for an example, it is deemed that you guys violated school policy, right? What happens? What happens is that they have to call you in. The 5th Amendment now kicks in, right? The 5th Amendment is due process. The 5th Amendment is due process. And what that means is your due process. That's how you have to remember it, right? I'm breaking all this down. It sounds convoluted and stressful. Bill of Rights, 4th Amendment. 4th Amendment, you're protected against searches. School campus, you're not. But they still need reasonable suspicion to search you. You get caught doing something, 5th Amendment kicks in. The 5th Amendment is basically you getting due process. Your due process. What's the process that I get as a student? Now you're in the principal's office. They're talking to you about the conduct that you violated, the school student policy. They have to give you evidence of what it is that you did, and they also have to allow you to tell your story. They cannot suspend you without doing that. I have a lot of calls on this week already. Students are getting suspended in my hometown in Arizona, out here. So that's why I chose this topic. They cannot suspend you without giving you an opportunity to be heard. That's the 5th Amendment. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It doesn't matter if I'm in a hut in Mississippi, if I'm in the backwoods of Minnesota. The Constitution trumps. It is the law of the land, and the 5th Amendment says that they have to have evidence, and you have to have an opportunity to tell your side of the story. Point blank, if you do get caught violating student policy. Okay, so basically, that's it for right now. I do want to take time out. All the mothers who have lost somebody, who have lost children on school campuses in the wake of guns, in the wake of violence, it has to stop. Like, it has to stop. As an attorney, me being an attorney, yeah, it's good for me to tell you guys these rules. Yeah, it's good for me to tell you that under the Second Amendment, you have a right to have a gun. Don't take the gun on the school campus, point blank. Leave your Draco and your backpack at home. Don't bring it to the school campus, okay? So although you do have a right to under the Second Amendment, don't go to school acting a fool. That's the new slogan, right? Don't go back to school acting a fool, okay? You heard it from me first, so don't try to use it later. It's already copywritten because this is date stamped. But anyways, but go back to school knowing your rights, okay? So parents, get your handbooks. Students, get your handbooks. And basically, what does all this mean, right? What does all this mean? We have to stop. As a community, judges, attorneys, the violence that's going on in schools, we need to be more aware. As a community, board members, we need to come together. We need to teach teachers what reasonable suspicion is. We need to teach police officers what probable cause is. We need to teach police officers how not to basically use escalated force when they're arresting someone. This has to stop. The racism that's going on right now in the other states, it has to stop. Okay? People's federal rights are being violated. People's civil rights are being violated, and it has to stop. And I know that I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing to get this information to you guys. So, like I said, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the students that have come out, Cherry, Daniela, and Charity. Did you guys learn anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you be able to say you can go back to school, not acting a fool, but
Yeah.
go back to school in style, actually knowing your rights?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. And you guys out there, thank you for all your support. Thank you for following me. Thank you for DMing me. I have so many messages that are coming in a day. Keep bringing them in. I have people who are monitoring that. People who are monitoring my requests. People who are monitoring my messages. If I don't get back to you, somebody on my team will get back to you. I will make sure I address that topic. I will make sure that I give you what you need to be able to go out in society, to be able to speak, not crazy, but speak knowing your rights. So continue to follow us on Facebook, Shequel Ross, or the law offices of Shequel Ross, IG and Instagram at SHElaw Office. My website is www.SHElawfirm.com, and if you missed this on my website this week, we're getting ready to start loading all these videos that go back the last 4 or 5 months that I've been doing. They'll be on my website, on YouTube, Shequel Ross, or SHElaw Firm, and you guys already know the number. Do you know the number? Do you know the number? So you know the number? Because if you rock with SHElaw Firm, you should already know the number, because that means that Shequel is your attorney, so you should already have the number. And it's 855-5-SHElaw. Bye.